set up before we get playing.
Planning began for a large offensive to try and knock the British out of the war in the spring of 1918. The collapse of the Russian Army did not stop the Allies from the spring offensive. Robert Nivelle had succeeded Joffre as Commander-in-Chief of the French Army in December 1916. He believed in aggressive tactics and had introduced the innovative use of a carefully timed creeping barrage. The tactic had proved successful.
There, he got back to his grandma.
Oh well.
And he hoped to repeat the success on the Western Front in 1917. The idea of an artillery
Well, I just started a match.
I was here.
What cost me a dime?
technique that required practice and good lines of communication. But as the telephone lines were often used in such barrages, it was not unknown for the advancing infantry to be cut down by their own artillery. Although Nivelle was aware of the German he refused all advice. He assured the politicians that he would break through within a week. He made back as fought on the day of 16 It was an unmitigated disaster.
Yeah. I'm not gonna get straight on the kills like I usually do.
For the French soldiers, it was one failure too. After a week of diversion attacks by the British. On April 16th, the first day of the offensive, the French suffered a similar disaster to that suffered by the British on the first day of the Somme the previous year. The large-scale use of French-built light brought little advantage, with 150 lost on the first day. Ironically, in the attacks on the 16th and 17th, Nivelle's own innovation, the creeping barrage, was incorrectly deployed, leading to increased French casualties.
I'll flip.
What are you doing, leftovers? Why are you giving them to this man? You're fired immediately.
I didn't do anything wrong. This is food I bought for him. He's a veteran.
She used her own hard-earned kit to pay for that very deal. Fired with life. You walk in and watch the
Thank you so much. But you also asked a ton of questions, which is awesome, mainly related to irrigation. You know, when, how much, how often, and rivers ebb and flow. These practicalities, my friends, are pretty simple to master and can unlock the maximum potential of stone.
Sorry, I'm a bit slow. They're not being my best right now.
trying to kill me for centuries, and here I am, dying of old age. If you want something done, do it yourself. You will die, and the Time Lords will never return. You still can't work up the courage to shoot me, can you? You're still worried I've got something up my sleeve! Not about, boys. Got nothing this time.
Oh, ball behind the rock. Stupid. Alright. And there we go. Let's access the Discord server.
Oh, you couldn't find time to do the dishes like I asked?
In this video, you're going to learn the 10 reasons why new hydroponic farm businesses fail and how to prevent it. So let's get started. And make sure to push the like button. A lot of likes tell the algorithm to push the video to more people who like that same content. With your support, you can help this channel a lot. Some experts claim that up to 95%
Oh, okay, fair fight, don't you say? Teaming up on me like little rats.
Others say the number is around 65%. Either way, these are staggering figures when one takes into account that most new hydroponic farm businesses
People do
fail
now
for
is
more
team.
or less the same reason. And make sure to watch this video through to the end, because I will be sharing a business plan template that will be very helpful. Reason 1, inadequate planning. As simple as it sounds, lack of forethought and planning is the main culprit behind virtually every business failure. Thankfully, 75% of most hydroponic farm business ideas fail at the planning stage, which is exactly where a business idea should fail. The only other option is to collapse on the street, perhaps under a pile of debt. Inadequate planning includes not fully understanding a product or service before selling it, not conducting detailed market or labor research, not compiling a realistic customer profile, not researching the competition.
I got my nutrient up twice a day. Usually about 5 in the morning.
You want to explain what they are and what they're there for?
The standard household, the bottom two household 100 in each household you'll have 80 and 200 microns. Right. I've changed those to 60 microns. Yeah. The top filter is the standard irrigation. I really probably clean those. I check them daily, but I only really clean them once a week.
And that's to stop the nutrients falling out the hole.
This is exactly the reason. Yeah. That's the other reason why I can't really control the butter. So I can when I walk the road, I can actually see them all squirting.
Absolutely. And then the bucket just drain straight back down. What's the size like?
We've got a 40 mil pipe required size for the radars.
Yep.
And gravity with the hill feeds it back to the
nutrient tank.
Tank beyond it. We've got a big float pump in there. And I'm only probably using 40% of what the pump was. How many litres in it? About 700 litres.
700 litres. That's a good size.
On a good day, I would.
Wow. Yeah, okay.
So that's why I'm talking about.
You mentioned that like saying the flow valve and seeing how much it drops.
Yeah, I have seen that. Only recently.
Oh, right. So that means you shouldn't be dropping about half a day.
Yeah, but I've seen that starting at 2.8 in the morning, coming in here at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, seeing my tank down to 200 litres, testing the tank to find the nutrient strength only 1.2, 1.4.
So they're stripping it and using the water that much.
Correct, yeah. But they're loving it. So,
well, they're producing.
Yeah.
They need it. I was really surprised with the growth rate.
I love the fruit that's set on it.
Yeah, it looks wonderful.
Thank you.
I originally would have assumed that the reason that you have smaller tomatoes here in the front is because you rotate these plants through, so that once you decide that these are on their course, you can then move over to this primary producer. But
no, that makes me look better, but unfortunately it's not true. The first row there is tomatoes, 5 varieties, and the second row here were cherries. Yellows, orange, and an orange grape. And when these oranges were they were the tallest, they were the healthiest, the greenest. The leaves were fantastic. The plants were just amazing, except they didn't have any flowers. And I'm looking at these plants over the top here going, there's something wrong. But yet I'm looking at all the other plants in here going, they like the nutrients, they like the water, they like the pH, they like the EC. So these are growable, but there's too many things. So I've tried 3 different other styles of cherries. Orange grape, a yellow grape, and a fire grape. Red grape with a white flower. I'm seeing some great flowers on these. I can see some clusters all through these.
So you think they're going to yield already?
I'm really happy with these.
And up the end, I've seen some of the beautiful banana tomatoes.
Yep.
Yep. They look really nice.
You were at the market with me on Saturday, and we were both blown away by customers.
They were just scrambling.
Reaching over each other.
Yeah.
I was waiting to see one of the ladies actually elbow another lady before it home.
There was one point where they were just crowded around the camera and the tripod, just completely oblivious to it. And I was standing back, just watching, going, "This is great B-roll."
Before the market, I would have suggested I was going to go 4 rows of big tomatoes, 2 rows of cherries. Well, the next greenhouse is up in
I killed him!
4 rows of cherries, and I'll have
Stupid.
big tomatoes up here. Reach in, grab a tomato. There's a lot of fresh tomatoes in there, some great colours. Some of the bottom rows are started. I mean, that's sitting on the ground. That's a beautiful tomato.
It looks perfect.
It'll cut with a butter knife, lovely flavour.
Yeah.
Will it match up to your black cream?
But, that'll keep way longer.
Yeah.
Because I know my black crims, I end up giving most of the ones away when I get like big yields because they're very soft. They won't refrigerate well. The meat once
You know what we food's gonna be, probably.
But these style of tomatoes, they keep.
You can change that. You can actually alter that yourself a little bit. Spraying calcium on it, calcium carbonate, or different forms of calcium will thicken the skin and provide a little bit more shelf life. Yeah. That's the only three things that sprayed in this: copper, Kosai blue, right. Dipel, because I leave the door open and I haven't fixed the gaps, so I do get a few butterflies. Yeah, so the Dipel is good for butterflies will...
My gun won't work.
You can put a Dipel over it.
Well, that's stupid. My gun wouldn't work.
Or if they start
No, I couldn't shoot. I could not shoot. It doesn't make sense.
Copper, which is Kosai blue. Yep. I think.
You'd get mad if you couldn't fire back if you had a shotgun.
Well, that day will probably last.
Wouldn't you?
2.5 years. You'll notice it on the lower legs. I just haven't sprayed anything for probably.
Can't defend yourself. You don't got no access to shoot.
In the greenhouse, there's nothing to wash it out.
And you can see that on mine as well. How long would you expect a tomato plant like this to go for?
Well, these are indeterminate, so really they'll just keep going and going. Yeah. But I won't be lowering them, I won't be leaning them. I'm hoping that these small ones will carry me on a little bit further. I will have the next greenhouse up and running soon. Yeah. And again, they're all trials to me, mate.
So you'll run these as long as they're bearing decent.
Correct. Right. And shape.
I'm only for earth simple. That's where I usually go.
One little thing. When a cluster comes out with 5 certain pieces of fruit, I always pick off the last 2 or 3 flowers because I prefer my clusters to have 3 or 4 large pieces of fruit instead of 4 or 7 small. Copper has a 1-day withholding period.
Hi, Alice.
Dipel has no withholding period, and calcium has no withholding period.
Look at this tomatoes.
Pull them out, mate. They're just, and that's how they fix the market too. I pick them the night before sale.
Do you leave the heads on them?
No, you never. Always take the tailings off. When they're in the box or in the bag, they will roll.
I'm getting annoyed at the game.
Oh, right.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Like, have a look.
No, you're not running.
Yeah. Sorry, they're the peculiar. I'm really happy.
So I guess one of the major issues I've had in my greenhouse is pollination rates. And you're not having any problems.
No, I've been.
My game's glitching out and not allowing me to fire at start. So I'm going to start not trying to rush straightly when I spawn. It's going to make it annoying.
And they rock and they move, so that helps. It makes them stronger.
The varieties are technically self-pollinating.
That's what they're listed. They get paid the big money for that.
That's what I found with mine. One variety that I'm running mine does. But I didn't touch them. No. They just pollinated themselves. So that's a major benefit over the top of your heirloom variety, the black spoons that I have anyway, because I know that that's not self-pollinating. Oh, I actually want to try one of these. So these are the banana toms, and they get, some of them have this really nice green patch outside.
If you pick them a couple of days right, or a couple of days before, they actually have a green stripe.
I've seen it. It looks fantastic, you know.
But as they ripen, they'll lose that colour.
Yeah, yeah.
Except for the new firecrackers that I'm growing down there are red, and the white stripe doesn't come out until they're ripe.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
Yeah, they're quite nice.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
Really good.
You'll be leaving the remains. You're not getting the seeds, by the way.
I'm eating them.
How's the seeds? The yellows are determinant. The yellows
And there we go. Perfect weapon I need right now.
A medium and a bit tall. They're planted in between the bananas. Yeah, the yellows bananas. They're planted in between the cherry bites.
Oh, they're a determinant.
They are. Yep, and like there's no tips to take cuttings off. Right. So it's a bit late.
You say we can't have a big determinant, they're not in F1?
No, they're not in F1. They're just an old heirloom one that I purchased through a... They're bloody brilliant. They aren't bad to eat, are they? No. Yeah, the customers love the flavour. Yeah.
It's all wrong. So are you serious that I can't have the food?
Give me that. Perfect. Come on.
70% of what we do at the market. But there is another 30%.
The indoor plant.
Right, correct. So let's have a look at your indoor plant nursery. So this is your nursery or your indoor plant?
Yes, we can't watch that.
Yes.
Thanks for your help today.
Yeah, no worries.
I've found that I can attract customers to see the plant and then buy veggies. Or actually, customers
Yeah.
by veggies.
I'm out streaming on reality.
And the plants are my wife's love and passion. So, share a home and my wife brings plants to share that passion together and unite it, expand and happy.
Have those friends come from
Yeah.
usually you have to go multiple different places.
Well, that's the easy word. We never use business for
Nah, man. That's bull! That is bull! That's stupid.
I just find someone who's going to come over and share the product that I'm growing and then give me money for it. And I'm really enjoying it. And the people at Pomona and other
To your zone.
makes the job.
That's stupid. I call bull on
Thank you
that.
all for having us and showing us around your 120 square meter greenhouse.
The start of a few to come, mate.
Start of a few to come too. So
Shut out midair. I'm trying to
The
run.
demand's there. I enjoy it. I get up every morning and I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm in the greenhouse at 5 o'clock every morning. I got a coffee in hand. I'm walking around checking ECs and pH. I love it. I jump out of bed to do it. I'm not being sarcastic or silly. I really do jump out of bed to do it.
yeah.
So, and the response of the market of people just happy to buy fresh produce.
Well, thank you for letting us in and letting us see your process and all the hard work you put in to take the market every weekend. And hopefully it's given you guys some information. There are a lot of viewers who are a big part of this role. And I wish you all the best.
I'm sitting in my kitchen, 6 a.m., coffee still brewing, when I hear the
Steal all
sound
the
of
loot.
folding chairs being set up in my backyard. Now, I'm not a more...
It's not working.
When 9-year-old Natalie Cox approached the $15 million helicopter with hydraulic fluid pooling beneath its belly like dark blood, the three professional mechanics barely glanced her way. Lawrence Butler, billionaire tech mogul, was too busy screaming into his phone about a collapsed billion-dollar merger to notice the small girl studying his grounded aircraft with the intensity of a surgeon examining a patient. But when she quietly announced, secondary hydraulic pump was cavitating due to metal contamination in the filtration system, using technical language that would impress MIT engineers, the entire hangar went silent. 4 hours of expert diagnostics and failed to identify what this child pinpointed in 30 seconds. Yet the real shock came when Lawrence finally looked down and saw the military dog tags hanging from her neck. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if
Stupid!
Make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow
Zip it.
I've saved something extra special for you.
I've been losing every
Air
round.
at Bear Valley Regional Airport carried the sharp bite of Montana winter, cutting through Lawrence.
Yeah, I want to win, not die.
As he paced outside Hangar 12, his Italian leather shoes clicked against the concrete. With increasing irritation, each step echoing off the metal walls like gunshots. The sound, mixed with the distant hum of aircraft engines and the occasional radio chatter from the control tower, creating a symphony of frustration that matched his mood perfectly. Inside the hangar, his pride and joy sat like a wounded giant. The Sikorsky S-92 executive helicopter, with its pristine white fuselage and navy blue trim, represented more than just transportation. It was his mobile office, his sanctuary above the clouds, his ticket to staying ahead in a world where being 3 steps behind meant bankruptcy. Today, it was also his biggest nightmare. Clayton Fisher, the airport's head mechanic, emerged from beneath the aircraft's belly section, wiping his hands on a grease-stained rag. His coveralls bore the patches of 26 years in aviation. Maintenance and his weathered face showed the kind of concern that made wealthy men nervous. Still nothing, Mr. Butler, Clayton called out, his voice carrying the weight of professional defeat. We've checked every hydraulic line twice. Tested. All the pumps, even pulled the main control valve. Everything looks perfect on paper. Lawrence stopped pacing and fixed Clayton with a stare that had intimidated boardrooms from New York to Silicon Valley. Perfect on paper doesn't get me to Chicago tonight. I've got a board meeting in 6 hours that's worth more than this airport. Sees in revenue all year. Trevor Mills, barely 24 and still learning the trade, poked his head out from behind the landing gear. His face was smudged with hydraulic fluid, and his hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his work light. The pressure of working on such an expensive aircraft under the owner's watchful eye was clearly getting to him. Maybe we should call someone from Denver, Trevor suggested, his voice cracking slightly. There's a specialist there who works on these Sikorsky systems. Lawrence's phone buzzed insistently in his coat pocket, the 7th call from his assistant in the past hour. Monica Butler's increasingly frantic messages about rescheduling, backup plans, and damage control. Lawrence ignored it. There were no backup plans. This merger had taken 2 years to set up, and the window of opportunity was closing fast. The hangar doors stood wide open, letting in the cold air and the sounds of airport life. Ground crews moved with practiced efficiency around smaller aircraft, their orange vests bright against the gray morning sky. A fuel truck rumbled past, its driver raising a casual hand in greeting to Clayton, who was too focused on the problem at hand to notice. Near the maintenance area, partially hidden behind a stack of oil drums and spare parts, sat Natalie Cox. She'd been there for over an hour, perched on an overturned milk crate that someone had abandoned near the tool storage. Her notebook was open on her lap, and she sketched with the focused intensity of a child completely absorbed in her world. Her jacket had seen better days. The denim faded to an almost white blue in places, with patches sewn on by careful hands. Her sneakers had definitely seen worse days.
Let's see if this actually is true, if it's a trick shot map.
The left sole, where the rubber had separated from the canvas. But her eyes were bright and alert,
show your worth.
Every movement of the mechanics, every gesture, every frustrated head shake. The dog tags around her neck caught the overhead lights when she moved. They weren't the typical child's jewelry. Nothing pink or sparkly or cute. They were serious metal with the weight of something that
done a lot more harder than this.
Earned through sacrifice and service. Lawrence noticed her for the first time when Clayton's radio crackled to life, startling him from his dream. Sandra Hugh's voice came through the static professional, but tinged with curiosity.
There you go, it changed up the snipers. But sadly, this map can be broken.
For 2:30.
Level they leave out.
Clayton keyed his mic, glancing apologetically. And Lawrence, yeah, Sandra, going to be a while longer, maybe a lot longer. Copy that. I'll let Tower know to keep that slot flexible. Lawrence's frustration boiled over. He pulled out his phone and jabbed at the screen, calling Monica for the 8th time that morning. The call connected immediately. Monica, I don't care what you have to do. Charter something. Buy something. I need to be in the air within 2 hours. His assistant's voice came through tiny and stressed. Sir, I've tried everything. There's nothing available.
Like this, you just keep on bouncing the tiger.
The option is a smaller helicopter out of Billings, but you need to make 2 stops, and you'd still miss the morning session. Lawrence closed his eyes and counted to 5. A habit his father had taught him during his first hostile takeover. Never let him drive
you going swimming?
But this wasn't just business. This was his reputation, his word.
Then I've got the filter. I'm about to have to go reach down there and grab it.
Balanced on the edge of one malfunctioning aircraft. Keep trying. stood up and was walking directly toward Clayton. Her movement was purposeful, not the wandering curiosity of a child exploring. She had the deliberate stride of someone with something important to say. Lawrence was about to intervene, to call security, or at least shoo the child away from the expensive machinery when she spoke. "I can fix your helicopter, mister." Her voice carried clearly across the hangar, cutting through the ambient noise of tools and radio chatter. It wasn't the high, piping voice of most 9-year-olds. It was steady, confident matter of fact. Clayton looked down at her, his expression softening into the kind of gentle smile adults reserved for children who don't understand the complexity of adult problems. "That's real sweet, honey, but this isn't a bicycle with a flat tire. This is serious machinery." Natalie didn't smile back. She tilted her head slightly, listening to something only she could hear, then pointed directly at the open access panel beneath the aircraft's belly. "Your secondary hydraulic pump is cavitating because you've got metal contamination in your filtration system," she said with the same tone she used to discuss the weather. "The debris is creating pressure fluctuations that make the pump lose prime. It's not your main pump, it's not your pressure lines, and it's not your control valves. It's probably brass shavings from a worn fitting that's been failing for about 3 weeks." The hangar fell silent except for the distant sound of an approaching aircraft and the steady hum of the overhead lights. Clayton's smile faded completely. Trevor straightened up from behind the landing gear, his eyes wide. Lawrence stopped breathing. 30 seconds. A 9-year-old girl in duct-tape sneakers had provided a more specific diagnosis than 3 aviation professionals with decades of combined experience. Clayton recovered first, his professional skepticism warring with genuine curiosity. "Little girl, where did you learn words like that?" Natalie's hand moved unconsciously to the dog tags at her throat, her fingers closing around them briefly. "My daddy taught me," she said quietly. "He always said that machines talk to you if you know how to listen."
I'm listening.
His business instincts overriding his shock. "And where exactly is your father, young lady?" The question hung in the air for a moment longer than it should have. Natalie's eyes flickered with something deeper than sadness, something that made Lawrence suddenly regret asking. "He's not here anymore," Natalie said quietly, "but he taught me lots of things before he went away." Trevor wiped his hands nervously. "On his coveralls. Clayton, maybe we should check the filtration system. I mean, it couldn't hurt to look right." Clayton nodded slowly, still staring at Natalie with a mixture of wonder and professional caution. Yeah, let's take a look." He paused. "But honey, you need to step back while you work. This is still dangerous equipment." Natalie nodded and returned to her milk crate, but Lawrence noticed she positioned herself where she could see everything clearly. Her notebook remained open, but she wasn't drawing anymore. She was watching, evaluating, waiting.
Simple math making.
Clayton and Trevor
Very easy.
disappeared beneath the aircraft, their voices muffled by the fuselage, but their words still audible in the quiet hangar. Filtration system.
I've done a lot more harder trick shots.
Haven't checked that specifically. Hand me that pressure gauge, Trevor. Clayton, look at this. Trevor's voice carried excitement. The filter housing. There's metal.
And they have a weird map.
And look at this fitting. It's completely worn down. Electronic beeping filled the air, followed by Clayton's increasingly animated voice.
I don't have no eyes, remember?
Clogged with brass shavings. No wonder the pump couldn't maintain consistent pressure. A pause, then louder. How in the hell did a 9-year-old girl know that?
This is what
Lawrence looked across the hangar at Natalie, who sat calmly on her crate, one hand still touching the dog tags at her throat. Her eyes met his across the distance, and for a moment he felt like he was looking at someone much older than 9, years old. Someone who knew things she shouldn't know. Someone who wore military identification like it belonged to her. The weight of those dog tags seemed suddenly familiar in a way that made his chest tighten with a red was something about the way she touched them.
I hate
Something
that.
about the
Then I gotta
reverence
come
of the
to
gesture
the
that
reset.
reminded him of soldiers he'd known. Soldiers who wore their service like a sacred trust. As Clayton and Trevor continued their work beneath, the helicopter, calling out technical specifications and expressing amazement at the accuracy of Natalie's diagnosis, Lawrence found
Look, I
himself
can see you
studying
guys
this
hadn't cleaned
remarkable
the front
child
room for a while.
with growing intensity. She wasn't just precocious or lucky.
You have no
She was
excuse in
demonstrating
here.
the
You
depth
at
of
least got it.
someone who had saved his life in circumstances he tried not to think about. The memory was there, just at the edge of his consciousness, waiting to surface. Afghanistan, 8 years ago. A helicopter crash that should have killed him, and a medic who had pulled him from the wreckage. A medic whose dog tags had caught the firelight as he worked to save Lawrence's life. Lawrence stared at the tags around Natalie's neck. And for the first time since the morning's crisis began, he forgot entirely about billion-dollar mergers and corporate deadlines. All he could think about was a young soldier's voice in the darkness, calm and professional, even as explosions echoed in the distance, saying words that had haunted Lawrence's dreams for 8 years.
I can't understand.
I'm gonna get you out of
Nobody knows
here,
how
that's
to
a
swing
promise.
around here, right?
Telling and preparing this
I mean,
story
come on, I did
took us a
back
lot of
there.
time.
I'm one
So
who
if
had
you
to
are
smell
enjoying
like
it,
fucking
she was unsurprised by their discovery, as if she'd known all along what they would find. How long to replace it? Lawrence asked, his voice tight with controlled urgency. Clayton turned the component over in his weathered hands, examining the extent of contamination. That's the problem. This is a specialized filter for the S-92's hydraulic system. We don't stock these particular units. I'll need to order one from the manufacturer, and even with expedited shipping, we're looking at 72 hours minimum. The words hit Lawrence like a physical blow. 72 hours meant missing not just tonight's board meeting, but the entire merger window. 2 years of negotiations, countless due diligence processes, and hundreds of millions in potential profit. All evaporating because of a component that probably cost less than his morning coffee. His phone buzzed again. Monica, undoubtedly with more bad news about charter alternatives. Lawrence ignored it and walked over to where Natalie sat, his expensive shoes echoing in the sudden quiet of the hangar. Young lady, he said, crouching down to her eye level, you seem to know quite a bit about aircraft systems. Natalie nodded solemnly, her small fingers absently touching the dog tags at her throat. Some things. Do you know anything about where we might find a replacement filter on short notice? She considered this seriously, her bright eyes studying his face with the intensity that made him uncomfortable.
It seems to be doing this. I shut it off and turned it back
Depends on
on.
what else is
And
around
it's still
here.
going apeshit.
Clayton overheard and approached, carrying his tablet with the part specifications displayed. Honey, this is a very specific component. It's not like we can just grab something similar from another aircraft. Natalie stood up and walked over to Clayton, studying the screen with a fluency that made both men shift uncomfortably. She was reading the technical specifications with the ease of someone who understood every acronym and measurement. The filter element itself is standard, she said after a moment. It's the housing and mounting hardware that are proprietary to Sikorsky. But if you had the right tools and some basic machining capability, you could adapt a compatible filter to work temporarily. Trevor's eyebrows shot up. Adapt? You mean modify an aircraft hydraulic system? Not modify, Natalie corrected patiently. Adapt. My daddy used to say that sometimes the best solution isn't the prettiest one, it's the one that gets people home safe. Lawrence felt something stir in his chest at the way she said Daddy, with that particular mix of reverence and loss that spoke of fresh grief. What kind of work did your father do?
Well, were you coming from me or you?
Natalie answered simply. Big things, little things, broken things that everyone else said couldn't be fixed. He said that when people needed help, he found a way to help them, even if it wasn't. The hangar's overhead door rumbled as another aircraft taxied past, the sound of its engines momentarily drowning out conversation. Through the opening, Lawrence could see the rolling rhythm of airport operations continuing around them. Pilots filing flight plans, ground crews servicing aircraft, the busy choreography of
it's the worst map I've played in a while.
Very far away from his. In current crisis, Sandra Hughes appeared in the doorway, her radio crackling with air traffic control chatter. She was a compact woman in her 40s.
100 extra levels, not fun. It's an actual game. Fun trick shot game. Yeah, welcome in.
Clayton, she called out, I've got 2 more aircraft requesting hangar space for weather. Delays. How much longer are you going to need with Mr. Butler's bird? Still working on it, Sandra. Could be a while. Sandra walked over to inspect their progress, nodding professionally at Lawrence before her eyes settled on Natalie. Well, I'll be. If it isn't our little airport mascot. Haven't seen you around in a few days, sweetheart. Lawrence's attention sharpened. You know her? Sure do. Natalie's grandmother Lucille brings her out here most weekends. Kid's got a real fascination with aircraft, don't you, honey? Natalie smiled for the first time since Lawrence had been watching her. Hi, Miss Hughes. I like watching the planes and helicopters. More than watching, from what I've heard, Sandra said with a warm chuckle. Betty over at the diner was telling, and how you helped that charter pilot figure out his engine trouble last month. Clayton's head snapped up. She did what now? Sandra settled into the rhythm of a good story. Old Bill Peterson was having fuel injection problems with his Bell 206. Thing would run fine on the ground, but start losing power at altitude. Had him stumped for weeks. Then little Natalie here takes one listen to the engine and tells him his fuel metering unit was sticking due to contaminated fuel lines. Trevor whistled. Was she right? $80 part fixed a problem that was about to ground a $250,000 aircraft. Sandra replied, looking fondly at Natalie. Girl's got her father's ear for mechanical problems. Lawrence felt pieces of a puzzle beginning to align in his mind. Her father worked here? Sandra's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. Captain Gregory Cox was one of the finest mechanics to ever work out of this airport. Military trained, worked on everything from fighters to transport helicopters. After he got out of the service, he did contract work. Maintenance, repairs, whatever needed fixing. What happened to him? The question created an uncomfortable silence. Sandra glanced at Natalie, who had gone very still, then back at Lawrence. Medical emergency about 8 months ago. Sandra said carefully.
That's not the one you work
Gregory
at.
was deployed overseas, consulting on helicopter maintenance for a forward operating base. There was an attack, and he... Her voice trailed off. Natalie spoke quietly without looking up. He didn't make it home. Lawrence felt something cold settle in his stomach. Here was a child who had lost her father in military service, living with her grandmother, spending her weekends at the airport where her father had worked. And somehow, in the midst of her grief, she had absorbed enough aviation knowledge to diagnose problems that stumped experienced mechanics.
I know.
This time he answered without checking the caller ID. Monica, what do you have for me? Sir, I found a charter helicopter, but it's going to require a fuel stop in Denver, and you won't arrive until after 10 p.m. The board meeting will be over. Vincent looked at the clogged filter Clayton still held, then at Natalie, who was now sketching again in her notebook. What if I told you we might have the helicopter fixed today? Sir, I thought
Grandpa
Jack said it was impossible without the part. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Lawrence ended the call and addressed Natalie directly. You mentioned adapting a compatible filter. How exactly would that work? Natalie closed her notebook and stood up, her movements deliberate and confident. First, we'd need to find the right base component. The filtration specifications have to match exactly, but the physical mounting can be modified. She walked over to a workbench covered with various mechanical components and spare parts, scanning the organized chaos with an expert eye. Then we'd need to fabricate mounting hardware, probably using parts from the old filter housing combined. With standard fittings, Clayton joined her at the workbench, his skepticism warring with genuine curiosity. And you think that would actually work? It would work, Natalie said with quiet certainty. The question is whether you trust it to work well enough to fly. Lawrence found himself studying this remarkable child with new eyes. She wasn't just precocious or lucky. She was demonstrating a depth of technical understanding that spoke of serious education and natural talent. The way she moved around the workshop, identifying components and explaining procedures, reminded him of the best engineers he'd worked with in his corporate career. But there was something that nagged at the back of his mind. The way she touched those dog tags, the reverence in her voice when she spoke of her father, the military bearing that seemed oddly mature for a 9-year-old, and those dog tags themselves. There was something familiar about them. Something that made his chest tighten with recognition he couldn't quite place. How long would this modification take? He asked. Natalie considered this carefully.
Hey, Grandpa, question. Did you get the money for Drawing Man?
Would have to do most of the actual work. My hands are
too small
for some of the connections.
Yeah,
Clayton
mine's in the car.
was already pulling components from storage bins, his professional instincts overriding his doubts. Trevor, get me the precision toolkit and find every compatible filter we have in stock. As the two mechanics began gathering materials, Lawrence crouched down beside Natalie again. Why are you helping us? He asked quietly. Natalie's hand went to her dog tags again, her fingers tracing the outline of the metal identification. Because that's what my daddy would have done, she said simply. He always said that when people are in trouble and you have the knowledge to help, you help. That's what service means. Lawrence stared at the dog tag she touched so reverently. The nagging feeling of familiarity growing stronger. There was something about those tags. Something about the way they caught the light that triggered memories he'd spent years trying to bury. Afghanistan.
Welcome in.
Helicopter crash. A medic who had saved his life, but that was impossible. That had been 8 years ago, and the medic who had saved him had been, "Those belong to your father?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, sir. He earned them in the army. Before he became a contractor, he always wore them when he worked, said they reminded him why he chose to serve." The pieces of memory were falling into place now, bringing with them a flood of images Lawrence had tried to forget. A burning helicopter, Smoke and flames, the weight of someone pulling him from the wreckage, and dog tags, identical to the ones Natalie wore, catching the firelight as steady hands worked to save his life. Captain Gregory Cox. The name was there, buried in the trauma of that night, but surfacing now with crystal clarity. Lawrence's phone buzzed with a text from Monica. Board meeting moved to 8 p.m. Chicago time due to weather delays.
Shit, this is
Windows
about...
still open if you can get airborne by 5 p.m. Hope and urgency surged through him in equal measure, but for the first time since the crisis began, the business deal seemed secondary to the impossible coincidence unfolding before him. Natalie, he said carefully, what was your father's full name? She looked up at him with eyes that seemed far too old for her 9-year-old face. Captain Gregory Michael Cox, United States Army. Why? Lawrence felt the world shift around him as 8 years of carefully buried memories crashed back into his consciousness. The child who had saved his business deal was the daughter of the man who had saved his life. Lawrence Butler stood frozen in the hangar, staring at Natalie Cox as 8 years of carefully buried memories crashed back into his consciousness with the force of an avalanche. The name Captain Gregory Michael Cox echoed in his mind, bringing with it flashes of images he'd spent years trying to forget. The acrid smell of burning aviation fuel, the weight of someone dragging him from twisted metal, steady hands working to stop bleeding while explosions echoed in the distance. Afghanistan 2016, a routine transport mission that had gone catastrophically wrong when their helicopter took enemy fire and crashed in hostile territory. Lawrence had been there as a civilian contractor, overseeing the installation of communication systems for forward operating bases. He should have died in that crash. Would have died if not for the army medic who had pulled him from the wreckage and kept him alive during the longest night of his life. Sir, Natalie's voice cut through his paralysis, concern creeping into her young features. Are you okay? Lawrence blinked, forcing himself back to the present moment. The hangar around him came back into focus. Clayton and Trevor gathering tools, Sandra checking her radio, the steady hum of airport operations continuing beyond the open doors. But superimposed over it all was the memory of another voice, calm and professional in the darkness, saying words that had haunted his dreams. Stay with me, sir. I'm going to get you home. That's a promise. Your father, Lawrence said slowly, his voice hoarse. Captain Cox, he was deployed to Afghanistan in 2016. Natalie nodded, her small hand unconsciously touching the dog tags at her throat. He did 3 tours there. The last one was supposed to be just 6 months, consulting on helicopter maintenance and training local mechanics. Her voice grew quieter. But there was an attack on the base where he was working. He saved someone during the evacuation, but... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Lawrence felt his legs grow weak. He sank down onto a nearby toolbox, his mind reeling from the impossibility of what he was hearing. The child who had just diagnosed his helicopter problem, who had inherited her father's mechanical genius, was the daughter of the man who had saved his life 8 years ago. Clayton looked up from his parts inventory, noticing Lawrence's pale complexion. Mr. Butler, you feeling all right? You look like you've seen a ghost. In a way, he had. Gregory Cox had been more than just the medic who saved him that night. During the 14 hours they'd spent hiding in a bombed-out building, waiting for extraction, the young soldier had talked about his family back home. His wife, Sarah, who worried every day about his deployments. His little girl, Natalie, who was barely 2 years old, but already showed an uncanny interest in taking apart any mechanical toy she could get her hands on. She's going to be an engineer someday, Gregory had said, his voice proud despite their desperate circumstances. Kid can figure out how anything works just by looking at it. Got that from her old man, I guess. Lawrence remembered laughing despite their situation. despite the pain from his injuries and the uncertainty of whether they'd survive until morning. Gregory had showed him photos on his phone. A tiny girl with dark hair and bright eyes, grinning as she played with a toy helicopter that looked remarkably similar to the one that had just crashed. Mr. Butler? Trevor's voice seemed to come from very far away. Should we continue with the filter modification? Lawrence looked up to find everyone in the hangar staring at him with concern. He'd been silent for more real than the present moment. Natalie was watching him with particular intensity, her young face creased with worry. "I knew your father," Lawrence said quietly, the words coming out before he could stop them. The hangar fell silent except for the distant sound of aircraft engines and radio chatter. Natalie's eyes widened, her hand tightening. "Around her dog tags, you knew my daddy?" Lawrence nodded slowly, struggling to find words adequate for what he needed to say. "He saved my life in Afghanistan 8 years ago. Our helicopter was shot down and his voice caught. He pulled me from the wreckage, kept me alive. Until rescue arrived." Natalie stared at him for a long moment, her young mind processing this information. Then slowly, recognition dawned in her features. "You're the contractor," she said softly. "The one Daddy talked about, the one who was working on the communication systems." He talked about me all the time, especially after he came home from that deployment. He said he'd saved a good man that night, someone who was trying to help make the world safer. Natalie's voice grew stronger. "He said you'd promised to do something important with your life, to make sure his sacrifice mattered." Lawrence felt tears prick in his eyes. He did remember making that promise in the darkness of their hiding place, when Gregory's steady presence had been the only thing standing between him and despair. He promised that if he survived, if he made it home, he would build something meaningful with the second chance he was being given. And he had built something. Butler Technologies had grown from a small startup to a multinational corporation, employing thousands of people and developing communication systems that kept soldiers safer in combat zones around the world. Every success, every contract, every technological breakthrough had been driven by the memory of that night and the debt he owed to a young medic who had refused to leave anyone behind. But until this moment, he'd never had the chance to thank Gregory Cox personally. The soldier had been transferred to a different base shortly after their rescue, and Lawrence had been evacuated for medical treatment. By the time he was recovered enough to search for his rescuer, Gregory had been deployed again, and military bureaucracy had made contact impossible. Clayton cleared his throat uncomfortably, clearly sensing the emotional undercurrents he didn't understand. "Maybe we should give you folks some privacy. This seems like..." "No," Lawrence said.
The server has been posted on my reality account if you want to join it.
Right, we need to fix this.
Assassin, you can... What is that?
Directly at the young girl.
Oh, Lily. Hi, sir. Go. Hi. Go in, Club Assassin.
Today, that means getting this aircraft airborne, so I can save my company and the jobs of 3,000 people who depend on it. Natalie smiled.
Can you collab?
The first truly bright expression he'd seen from her. Daddy would like that. He always said the best way to honor someone is to help other people. Clayton and Trevor exchanged glances, clearly lost, but willing to follow Lawrence's lead. "So, we're doing the filter modification?" Clayton asked. "We're doing whatever it takes," Lawrence replied. "Natalie, show us what we need to do." The next hour transformed the hangar into a precision workshop. Natalie guided Clayton and Trevor through the process of identifying compatible filter components, her small hands pointing to specific parts, while her young voice provided technical explanations that would have impressed aerospace engineers she had them locate a hydraulic filter with the correct flow rate and pressure specifications.
We made your story
Through
section.
the process of modifying the mounting hardware to fit the Sikorsky's unique configuration. Her knowledge was encyclopedic. She knew which tools to use for each operation, which materials would provide the best seal, even which torque specifications were required for the mounting bolts. The key thing, she explained as Clayton carefully, machined a new mounting bracket is maintaining the same flow dynamics as the original component. The filter media has to be positioned exactly right, or you'll create turbulence that could damage the pump. Trevor shook his head in amazement as he helped align the modified assembly. Natalie, where did you learn all this? I mean, this is master technician level knowledge. Daddy taught me, she said simply. He used to bring me to his workshop when I was little. Said that understanding how things...
Sass, you know your mic's unmuted, right?
...a person could get. Her voice grew wistful. He taught me to listen to machines, to understand what they're trying to tell you when something's wrong. Lawrence watched this remarkable child guide two experienced mechanics through a complex repair procedure, and he found himself seeing Gregory Cox in every gesture, every explanation, every moment of quiet confidence. The father's technical genius lived on in his daughter, passed down like a sacred trust. But more than that, Lawrence could see Gregory's values reflected in Natalie's approach to the work. She wasn't showing off or seeking attention. She was simply doing what needed to be done to help people in trouble. Service with himself, exactly as her father had taught her. His phone buzzed with another update from Monica. The Chicago meeting had been delayed again due to weather, pushing his departure window to 6 p.m. He had 3 hours to get this helicopter airborne, 3 hours to honor the promise he'd made to a dying soldier 8 years ago. How are we doing? He asked Clayton, who was making final adjustments to the modified filter assembly. Better than I expected, Clayton admitted. This kid's design is actually brilliant. The flow characteristics should be identical to the original component. Maybe even better due to the improved filter media. When can we test it? Installation will take about 30 minutes, Trevor replied. Then we'll need to run pressure tests and system checks. If everything looks good, you could be wheels up in 2 hours. Lawrence felt hope surge through him for the first time since the crisis began. But as he watched Natalie supervise the final stages of the repair, he realized that success in Chicago suddenly seemed less important than the opportunity to honor Gregory Cox's memory by supporting his daughter's future. Natalie, he said quietly, drawing her aside while Clayton and Trevor prepared for installation. After we get this helicopter fixed, I'd like to talk to you and your grandmother about something important. She looked up at him with those disconcertingly mature eyes. About Daddy? About you, Lawrence replied, and about making sure you have every opportunity to become the engineer your father knew you could be. Natalie smiled.
No, don't do anything to Galaxy.
Daddy always said that good things happen when people help each other. I think he'd be happy that we're helping you today. Lawrence nodded, his throat tight with emotion. I think he would be too. The modified hydraulic filter slid into place with the precision of a Swiss watch, its custom machined mounting bracket aligning perfectly with the Sikorsky's frame. Clayton Fisher tightened the final connection with practiced care, his weathered and steady despite the pressure of working on a $15 million aircraft under the watchful eyes of its billionaire owner. Torque specification is 35 foot-pounds, Natalie called out from her position beside the workbench, consulting. The notebook where she'd sketched detailed diagrams of the modification process. Too loose and you'll get leakage under pressure. Too tight and you'll strip the threads. Trevor Mills monitored the torque wrench readings, calling out the numbers as Clayton worked. 28, 30, 32, 35. Perfect, Lawrence. Butler stood nearby, his expensive suit incongruous among the mechanic's coveralls and the industrial environment of Russia. But his attention wasn't on the repair work. It was on the 9-year-old girl who had orchestrated one of the most impressive displays of technical problem-solving he'd ever witnessed. Watching Natalie guide the repair process, he could see echoes of her father in every gesture. The way she held her head when listening to the subtle sounds of machinery, the methodical approach to complex problems, the quiet confidence that came from deep understanding rather than mere knowledge. Gregory Cox had been like that too, Lawrence remembered. During their long night hiding from enemy patrols, the young medic had demonstrated the same calm competence while treating Lawrence's injuries with limited supplies and makeshift equipment. He'd never panicked, never doubted his ability to find solutions to seemingly impossible problems. Hydraulic system pressurization test, Clayton announced, wiping his hands on a clean rag. This is the moment of truth. The hangar filled with the mechanical sounds of hydraulic pumps coming online. Pressure gauges throughout the aircraft's systems began registering readings as fluid circulated through miles of lines, valves, and actuators. Lawrence found himself holding his breath as numbers climbed on the diagnostic displays. Primary system pressure nominal, Trevor reported from the cockpit. Secondary system, pressure building, holding steady at operating specifications. Clayton's voice carried barely contained excitement. All pressures are green across the board. No leaks detected. Flow rates are actually better than factory specifications. Natalie nodded with quiet satisfaction, making a final notation in her notebook. The modified filter has a higher flow capacity than the original. It should actually improve system performance. Lawrence felt a surge of relief so intense it was almost dizzying. The impossible had happened. A 9-year-old girl had diagnosed a complex mechanical failure and designed a repair solution that not only worked, but improved upon the original design. His Chicago merger was back on track. But as he prepared to thank Natalie and her team, the hangar's main doors rumbled open to admit an unexpected visitor. An elderly woman walked in from the afternoon sunshine.
More tomatoes.
Her silver hair catching the light, and her movements deliberate, despite her obvious age. She wore a simple blue cardigan over practical clothes, but there was something in her bearing that spoke of inner strength and hard-won wisdom. Natalie Cox, the woman called out in a voice that carried both affection and mild exasperation. Your teacher called the house wondering why you weren't in school this afternoon. Natalie looked up from her notebook, her face showing the universal expression of a child caught where she shouldn't be. Hi, Grandma Lucille, I can explain. Lucille Cox surveyed the scene, her granddaughter surrounded by aviation professionals, sophisticated diagnostic equipment, and what was obviously a major aircraft repair operation. Her eyes settled on Lawrence with the sharp assessment of someone who had learned to be protective of the people she loved. And you would be, she asked, her tone polite but wary. Lawrence stepped forward, extending his hand. Lawrence Butler, Mrs. Cox, your granddaughter has been extraordinary today. She solved a mechanical problem that had stumped 3 professional mechanics. Lucille's handshake was firm, her gaze unwavering. Natalie has always been good with mechanical things. Gets it from her father's side of the family. Her voice carried a note of old grief. Though I worry sometimes that she spends too much time around aircraft and not enough time being a regular 9-year-old. Grandma, Natalie protested, I was helping. Mr. Butler's helicopter was broken, and you thought you could fix a machine worth more than our house. Lucille's tone was gentle but concerned. Sweetheart, there's a difference between understanding how things work and taking responsibility for fixing other people's problems. Lawrence sensed the underlying tension in this family dynamic. Lucille was clearly proud of her granddaughter's abilities, but she was also trying to protect her from taking on adult responsibilities too young. It was a delicate balance, made more complex by the recent loss of Gregory and the financial pressures that undoubtedly came with raising a gifted child on a fixed income. Clayton joined their
Blitz
conversation,
Royale.
still somewhat dazed by the genuineness. Mrs. Cox, with all due
Let's end my
respect,
stream off
what
down
Natalie
here.
did today was remarkable. She didn't just fix a problem, she designed an engineering solution that improved upon the original manufacturer's specifications. She's 9 years old, Lucille replied firmly. She should be worrying about homework and playground friends, not aircraft hydraulics.